So this happened on Halloween when I was about 11. My friend and I decided to go trick-or-treating. Yeah, we were a little bit old, but we just wanted some free candy. I lived in a very nice neighborhood, one of the ones where everyone gives out the full-size candy bars, so it wasn't unusual to have a lot of people come there to trick-or-treat. However, that also meant that there's about an acre of front yard for each house, so it took about 3 minutes to walk between each door. It was a good night for Halloween weather-wise. Not too chilly, not rainy or anything. So it's approaching 8:30 p.m. and after hanging around on the golf course and appreciating our candy haul, we decide to start heading home and call it a night. The street I live on is a gigantic U shape. We were walking towards the end of the U further from my house as we wanted to take the long way since it was such a nice night. It's about 9 p.m. now, so no one else is really out anymore at this point, and people turned off their porch lights, the universal signal for no more trick-or-treaters. That's when we noticed a lone white van parked on the street. We made a joke about how it looks like the stereotypical kidnap vans with the painted windows. That's when we noticed it shift out of the park and slowly creep down the street towards us and park at the next house. Oh, they must have kids trick-or-treating, I thought. It wasn't uncommon for people to drive their cars from house to house since they were so spread out in our neighborhood. But given that it was 9 p.m. and a night with nice weather, it struck us as a bit odd. We checked every few minutes and it seemed to just be stopping from house to house like normal. We turned around again and kept walking at a leisurely pace, gossiping and whatnot. That's when we hear the car squeal as it moved forward down the hill and park again. This time, only about 2 houses away from us on the opposite side of the street. Again, weird time to trick-or-treat, but whatever. That's when we realized there was no kids getting out of the van. Not once. Now this was before my first phone, a red and white Samsung, since it was 2008. We were only 15 minutes from my house but a bit disturbed. So we walked to the nearest door, rang the doorbell, and struck our bags out in an attempt to act normal. A woman opens the door just a crack and proceeds to berate us for trying to trick-or-treat at this hour, and slams the door before we could even say a word. Okay, thanks lady. We turn around and the van is right there, parked in the wrong direction, on our side of the street. The windows are tinted so we can't even see the guy driving. Trying to keep our cool, we casually walk away from the door and up the street into this cul-de-sac loop that's on the side of the street that makes up the bigger U. If you cut through that loop and hop a couple of fences, you can end up at my back door. The van goes the same way. Now we know he's following us since there's no reason for him to go up this side street otherwise. We break into a sprint, and I am by no means athletic, but I hop those fences like an Olympian. We run inside my house, lock all the doors, and freak out while we sit in the front hall. Not 5 minutes later, the van slowly drives down the street past my house. We stress eat our candy and think of what could have happened if we hadn't been aware of our surroundings that night. Let me start off by saying that where I live, the government pushed Halloween to the 30th of October instead of the 31st. I for one think that decision was stupid as hell, but I digest. On the 31st, however, I decided to take a short walk as I do every day to take off a few pounds. I leave my house with my phone and my 3DS in my pockets. I collect play coins on my 3DS, which is why I brought it with me. I walk down the street, and about halfway to my local diner, I spot a white dog appear to be injured. He had no collar and was shivering and limping. I decided to follow the dog so I can make sure he knows how to get back to his owner, or if he even has one. If he was a stray, I would likely bring him home and take care of him until someone decides to adopt him. I'm following the dog for a rather long time. I almost decide to give up and go home. The dog basically was leading me in circles around the same block. Before I gave up, I noticed a strange blue liquid spilled on a tree. I have seen this tree about 6 times in the same night because of this dog, and none of those times did I see a bucket of paint, nor anybody else on this street. The dog was attracted to this tree, and after I followed it there, I noticed a brown house located behind the tree. It looked like a very old, beaten up house. There are windows at the bottom which I didn't really think anything of because a lot of houses where I live still have vacant slave quarters under them due to the area. As far as I know, no one uses them for anything more than storage. An old-looking man with a gold tooth walked out of this house after I rang the doorbell. I asked him if this was his dog, as the dog ran off again. He replied in a rather deep voice, "Yep, that there's indeed my dog. What of it?" I told him I was just making sure I made it home safely. "Thanks for the effort. This dog ain't done a damn good thing ever since he was born." I felt nervous, as I thought this implied he beat the dog and or neglected it. "Why do you still keep him then?" I asked. "Boy, shouldn't you be trick-or-treating or something in your Michael Jackson or whatever costume?" I felt offended, because I happened to be wearing a black jacket and fedora just for style. I repressed these feelings and told him that Halloween was yesterday. This had been all over the local news, so I assumed he didn't have internet or a TV and that he hasn't been out all day the previous day. "Well, I like your style, boy. Very sexy." I froze. I nervously told him thanks and attempted to walk away. "Where are you going, boy? Don't you want these back?" He held up my 3DS and phone. I ran back to the house and attempted to take them back, at which point the man said, "If you want these back, you're going to cooperate tonight, okay? Do whatever I say, and we both will be happy." I attempted to snatch them back, and the man grabbed my hand and began attempting to drag me into his house. I screamed at the top of my lungs, which alerted the neighbors, and he dropped me and my things and ran back into the house. I sprinted back to my house as well, now knowing why the dog was shivering. I decided I would only take walks during the day from then on. About 7 years ago or so, when I was 10, we went trick-or-treating, just like most kids that age do. It was me, my little brother who was 6, and my mom and stepfather. This year, we went to the huge country club in town. There were a lot of huge mansion houses, side by side and up and down the road. Figuring the houses were close enough to the road for my mom to keep an eye on us, she let us get out of the car and go trick-or-treating by ourselves, while she and my stepfather drove long behind us. Me and my brother trick-or-treated for only an hour, and our bags were already full of candy. So my brother decided to call it quits and stay in the car with our parents. I decided to hit just a few more houses. The very last house I came to was all the way at the end of the street. There was just a dead end after it. It was also a lot smaller than the other houses around it. For a moment, I was gonna stop and go back to the car, but I saw several kids going up to the porch of that house and figured one more couldn't hurt. When I got to the porch, there was an old man standing outside, handing out Milky Way bars, my favorite snack, to a little girl and her mother. I waited behind them till they were done, then took my turn saying trick or treat. This man then just starts handing me handfuls upon handfuls of candy, like he was seriously pouring the whole thing into my bag to the point it was falling out. The little girl and her mother were standing right there, looking at the decorations, but as soon as they left and were out of earshot, this guy leans down and whispers, "So where do you live?" with this creepy grin on his face. Me, being gullible and dumb, laughed and said, "Sir, you should know where I live. I live in," and then proceed to name the state that we live in. This guy seriously just stared at me for a moment like he wanted to facepalm. Right then, another kid and parent came up to the door, so this guy just tells me bye and quickly turns to them, so I left. For the next hour or so I didn't think anything of it, until it finally snapped in my head what he was implying. Then I got super creeped out and could barely sleep that night, but still, at least I got a whole new bag of Milky Ways out of it.